Hello, this is Nancy Allen, your instructor for beginning writing for publication online. This is the second video in session 1. In this video, we're going to talk about the different venues that you can have for publication. These are the ones we're going to talk about because these are the main ones. Publishing in a book or a monograph, which is a kind of a smaller book. Writing a book chapter. Publishing at a conference in either a poster or a presentation or conference proceedings, writing a dissertation or thesis, publishing in online journals, and then we're going to talk about journals, print, online, and open access in the next video. But on this one, we'll go from books all the way down to online databases. Okay, what about books and monographs? Let's talk about the positive part of them. First of all, it seems prestigious. This is the book I've written. These are the books I've written. That seems to give you lots of prestige. However, be careful of that. Books and monographs are big. There's a clear focus, and it's a focus that you've identified. You have. It's very personal because you're kind of in control of the narrative and the style and the length and things like that. It's a structured time period. You usually have had an agreement with a publisher. Now, I'm going to say this, may say this another time. If you're going to put the effort into writing a book or a monograph, put forth a prospectus to an editor first and have an editor identified who has agreed to publish your book before you start writing it. It's not good for your career to spend a year or two writing a book and then find out nobody wants to publish it. So look at publishers, put out a prospectus, and get a contract before you ever start writing a book or a monograph. Now, what are the downsides? First of all, it's very time consuming. It's going to take a lot of your academic time, so ask yourself if it's worth it. Second, it uses lots of your data. Now, the point is that you can only use data once. Now, I'm going to say that over and over again because it's very important as far as scholarship is concerned. So if you have it published, that data published in your book, that does not leave that data accessible for publishing in a journal paper. Now, think about, do you want to use all this big batch of data, big batch of information in a single book, or would it be better for your academic career to break it up into several journal arguments? So be sure you make that judgment call. Frankly, no matter how warm and fuzzy we feel about the books we've written, they have less academic value than a journal article. That seems crazy, doesn't it? But the point is that the value of your academic writing is how many people read it, cite it, use it to inform their own work. Now, a book, even though it may be a very powerful influence, it's going to be a powerful influence for only a few people because people have to buy that book. They have to read that book. And you're going to have fewer people do that than subscribe to and read a journal article. And the power is how many people read your article and how many people cite you and use your work to inform their work. So, book chapter, much the same thing. Book chapter or prior publication is pretty much guaranteed. Usually, either someone has contacted you and said, would you write a chapter for this book? Or else they've sent out a call for chapters and you've submitted your ideas and they agree to include you in the book. So you pretty much have it guaranteed that if your writing is quality writing, that they will publish it. That's a good thing. You don't have that when you're submitting in other venues. It gives you the ability to be a little more personal, to have a little more control over the style and the narrative. You have more room. Book chapters are longer usually than journal articles. But again, it's time consuming and it has less academic value for exactly the same reason. People still have to buy that book to read what you've written. Now, this is a very important slide, so I want you to pay very careful attention. Conferences. Now, if you're a beginning scholar, conferences presenting at conferences are very helpful. First of all, a conference proposal has a higher rate of acceptance than does a journal article. You also have the opportunity to get feedback from peers. People can comment on your work, say they have questions on your method, or they have ideas to strengthen your method, or perhaps you've left out a very important piece of the literature, and they can ask you if you've considered that in your work. So that feedback is very important. Now, bad thing is conferences are time consuming. If you're talking about should I spend this limited time I have writing a journal article to submit to a journal, or spend a week at a conference out of the country? Write the article. It's very tempting to go to a lot of conferences. Getting accepted is easy. And conferences are good. Don't get me wrong. I love conferences, and you learn so much interacting with your peers. But do not find yourself doing just conferences and not submitting articles. Conference publications have less academic value. They can use up your data. Remember what I said. Ethically, a data set should only be analyzed and presented in whole one time. Now, please read that ethics section that I give you with this as a resource for this part of the class. And make sure you understand, because ethics is hard to get a hold of, and you need to understand, is it okay for me to use this data if I've used it in this setting or in that setting? Make sure that you're very clear on that. Important, you can only publish research once. When you've published research, that data, those findings, that conclusion belongs to the publisher. If you've published in a certain journal, that journal owns that set of data now, because they're the ones who are investing in it. And so for you to publish somewhere else is very unethical. Now, usually abstracts or a poster at a conference is not considered a publication, or if you present a set of results without talking about the findings or analyzing it thoroughly. These are usually not considered prior publications, because people really have a hard time citing you from that. Now, papers at a conference, you'll notice that a lot of times you'll get a paper at a conference and it'll say draft across it, or draft at the top or the bottom, draft on the cover. What they're doing is they're saying that they intend to submit that to a journal, and they don't want you to cite from the conference paper. You can look for that paper soon in an article and you cite it from that. You can learn from it. But if they've asked you, they've put it out there as a draft, they're asking you not to cite it. Now, if you put your paper in the conference proceedings, that is considered a publication. So you can put that on your CV. It's a publication. But universities don't consider conference proceedings very high because they don't have impact ratings, and we're going to talk about that more. It's considered like a journal, but it's typically does not have as much prestige as other types of journals. So if you're trying to get a bunch of publications out there, and you don't have to worry about impact factor and all of that right now, then definitely publish in the conference proceedings. But if you're wanting to take that information, that data, and those findings and submit them to a journal, do not allow them to publish your conference paper in the proceedings. They will ask you. The conference will ask you, do you want this published in the proceedings? If you're going to submit it as a journal article, the answer is no. Okay, what about electronic databases for dissertations and theses? Most dissertations and theses are put on electronic databases these days. Your university may have their own, or they may insist that all of their dissertations and theses be put on a certain electronic database. The important thing is you're guaranteed publication. You don't want your work to disappear, and it won't if it's put in an electronic database. Most publishers will not reject as prior publication your theses or database. But notice, I said most. Some of the more competitive journals will not accept the data if you have published it, will not accept the paper if the information that is in that paper was published in an electronic database anywhere, even a dissertation or thesis one. So we're going to talk about finding out what journal you're going to publish in, but if you have a journal in mind that you really want to publish, read their author guidelines early on before you make any decisions related to your research, because they may be one of these that say if this data is included in a dissertation or electronic database, then we consider that a prior publication and you may not submit it to this journal. Now, perhaps the biggest reason is that certainly most dissertations and many theses have lots of data in it. Data that could be broken up into several papers. Maybe you want to look at you've got a mixed method and you want to look at the quantitative in one paper and the qualitative data in another paper. Or maybe you had subpopulations in your dissertation. Or maybe you looked at different elements. For example, in mine, I had classroom observations, I had textbook analysis, I had interviews, and I can separate those and use them in different papers and get more papers. And remember, more journal papers in higher journals, higher rated journals, is the goal. So make sure you don't waste your data by putting it all in one place. Okay, this is probably the summary of this particular video. Publishing in journals is always the first and best choice academically. Now, the field is changing like all other fields, but at this point in time, I can say with confidence that for your academic career, if you have different choices of where to publish, publishing in journals is your first and best choice. Now, after this video, read over the provided links according to your interest and need. Please pay attention to the ethics because it may save your academic career. It may save your reputation as a scholar. So pay attention to that. And then I have a few questions for you to answer before you go to the next video. Thank you.